Hey dudes, today I'm going to talk about the Cold Steel American Lawman. It's going to be a longer video, like a discussion, pretty much do an in-depth review on it. It's going to be all tabletop. It's going to be pretty, cerebral, I guess. So stay tuned if that's your thing. If it's not, I'm sure I'll be doing something funny in the near future. Alright, thanks guys. Well, this is the knife in question, the Cold Steel American Lawman. This is the dark earth variant, that's the dark earth coloured G10. There's also OD green, there's also black, and I think I've seen some light blue ones getting around. Maybe, I don't know, don't quote me on that. I might be confusing with the broken skull. The overall length of this knife is 20.5 centimeters or 8.1 inches. When you close the knife, what you are dealing with in pocket is 11.7 centimeters or 4.6 inches, and when it is closed, the widest point of the knife is about 4.2 centimeters across, which would be about 2 inches on the nose, maybe 1.8 inches or so across. I'm not reading that from a spec, I'm just reckoning it from this grid here, which is in metric, unfortunately. Sorry, America. The blade length is 8.9 centimeters or 3.5 inches, and that is from the blade that sticks out of the handle at the top. So I know there's this bit of a curve here, but from the back part of the blade here, I'll line it up. You can see it's covering 8 of these squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then about 0.9 of a square. So that's your 8.9 centimeters or 3.5 inches. Blade thickness is 3.5 millimeters, and it has a very, very flat spine on the back. The blade shape is a drop point. The blade grind is a hollow grind, which means a slight concave grind all the way down to the edge from this flat part here. And it's a very sort of high and deep hollow grind. The blade is facing, as in from the top to bottom of the blade, is 3 centimeters on the nose, which is about 1.2 inches if you really stress my conversion skills. The steel on this one is the CTS XHP. They did make an AUS 8 version some years back, which was covered in the paint, but this one is CTS XHP in the DLC coating. The handle is G10, and it is got the dark earth color scheme, as I said, and it is moderate G10. It's not super coarse G10 like you'd find on the Recon 1 series. I've had a mini Recon 1, or on the Emerson CQC7, that is what you call rough G10. And then you get your smooth G10, like say on some of your Spyderco Taiwanese knives, like your Japanese knives, so like your Kiwis, things like that. It's in the middle, so it's sort of, you can hear it when you scratch it, but scratching it doesn't make your fingernail come off. That's a pretty good way of reckoning it. So if you scratched an Emerson like this, you'd have white fingernail crud where you've just been scratching, so it doesn't happen on this one. The lock mechanism is called the Triad Lock, designed by Andrew Demko. It's Cold Steel's standard lock. I haven't seen too many folders of theirs that didn't have the Triad Lock. You've got the Bushman and you've got the Kudu, which have the Ram Lock and the Ring Lock respectively, but this one is the pretty much main Cold Steel lock you're getting these days. So Triad Lock, very strong form of the lock back, which has a separate notch here that's in the blade tang that squeezes around this pin here, that's below my thumb, and then you've got the blade, the lock tang has also the same cutout, so rather than just the lock tang pressing against the back of the blade, they both wrap around this pin here, so the pin becomes the stress bearing point, and it's obviously a cylindrical object, which is a very strong shape. So really, to fail this knife, you would more or less need the G10 to split and the pin to come upwards. So by having the blade and the lock pushed down, so very, very strong lock indeed. One of the strongest, I would go to wager. Whether that's necessary or not, that's a subject for a different video, which I'll link up here. Anyway, so that's the nitty gritty of the knife. Let's get into my thoughts on it and the real subject of this video. Alright, what makes the Cold Steel American Lawman such a great knife and much better than sort of the main Cold Steel folding knives that I would suggest, which is the Recon series or the Voyager series, is it's got nuance to it. It's been designed to be used in different ways, and it's designed cleverly to be used in different ways. So I'll start with the blade. They've gone nice and Simple with the blade. They've gone a very hunting knife reminiscent dozier shaped drop point, a slight drop, and then they've gone a really good length of flat followed by a really good length of belly. It's about half and half. About halfway along the knife you really start to see curvature. So you can use belly for belly jobs and the flat for flat jobs without being too short of either and without needing a much longer blade, without wanting for anything. The blade thickness is fairly stout. That's a stout thickness, about the same as sort of other purported sort of quite hard using knives like the Rick Hinderer design ZT0562. However, being a thick blade, they mitigate that by having a really well done hollow grind, which, because it's a tall blade, they can hollow grind it slowly, so they're not racing to that edge, so they can make it a gradual hollow grind, which, when you're talking about strength, isn't going to mean it's particularly weak. Often hollow grinds, when they rush it and they need to make it sort of go really cascading quickly, there's a fair portion of weakness towards the edge of the blade. Whereas this one here, they've gone a nice cascading. It almost looks flat to the naked eye. It is only when you put a bead of water on it that you notice the water will swoop down rather than just gradually roll down. And it is, it requires a little bit of patience and time to have that done on its own. So it's got a really, really well designed blade. In fact, I would almost say this is, when I think of perfect pocket knife blades, I'd almost say this is the one. It's really, really well done in terms of, I can't see anyone having a particular problem with this. It's got the thumb stud behind, when you think of other mistakes that people make, it's got the thumb stud well back, so behind where you're going to start cutting. So when you are doing cutting with the edge, so even if you are cutting all the way back to here, it's going to follow that grind line and the thumb stud's not going to get hung up on what you're cutting. So they've thought of things. It's got nuance. Really, really well done blade. I like the DLC coating on this one. It prevents rust, which CTS XHP isn't particularly rust prone, but it prevents rusts without peeling and looking horrible. And in fact, this kind of wears out, like it almost thins rather than just chunks off like say paint does when they just paint blade surfaces, or Cerakote when they Cerakote blades. This does just kind of eventually fade away, not looking too bad. Obviously not looking as good as just flat satin blades, but you know what? For black coated blade, I reckon this is about as good as it gets as well. So that is another thing that I really do enjoy about the actual blade, still talking of it. But the main star of the show here with the blade, I believe, is the upgrade to the CTS XHP, which they rolled out in 2014, I think, or 2015. Late one, early the other, one of the two. CTS XHP is one of the best performing steels for dollar out of all the steels you get. It cuts about as long as LMAX, but it costs a whole lot less than LMAX. It cuts well, it holds a really, really fine edge for a good long time, and you pay significantly less for it. You pay about sort of S30V prices for XHP, but it outperforms, as far as my testing goes, outperforms S30V by a reasonable margin, of about, it cuts about sort of 20% longer than S30V. If you put your stock in my rope cutting tests, which do or do not, I don't really care. So that is a real win for the American Lawman, and really it was for all of Cold Steel's folding knives at that point as well when they did do that upgrade. And the best thing about it, they're not charging a crazy amount for it. You're still getting it under $150 in Australia if you shop right, and under about sort of $80 in America if you shop right. I'll just put the link to the Outfitter Country eBay site that you can get these from on the screen right now. I'll just show you, and I'll put it in the comments down below. Why not? I got this one from Blades of Oz, which is my go-to dealer in Australia. But yeah, regardless of how much you pay, it's not going to be a crazy amount, even if it is on the higher side in the grand pool of cost. So great value for your great materials, in my opinion. Looking now towards the handle of the knife, the handle is really well done. This whole knife's purpose to me sings very much the same song as the Spyderco Endura, or even the Spyderco Delica, or the Native 5, those kinds of knives. It's just a workhorse style blade. It's not particularly thrilling to play with or to use, but when it comes to actually doing work, it is excellent. But what it has over those aforementioned knives, particularly the Endura, is this forward finger choil. So you're getting the same amount of blade as the Endura, or it's actually about the same as the delicate in terms of cutting edge, but you're getting a little bit of choil. So the whole blade is as long as the Endurers, but the actual cutting edge is probably about as long as the Delicates. Anyway, digressing, you get this fabulous forward finger choil, which you can, yes, go along to a Spyderco Native 5 to get, but this one just does it better, in my opinion. The Spyderco Native 5, you can choose between either FRN, which isn't as nice a feeling as this knife, or lined G10, which adds a bit of weight to this knife. So there you go. I just much prefer this one out of all of those as my standard boring workhorse beta knife, without a doubt. And when you look at the other knives in its sort of same range, so you've got Manix 2, which the version of the Manix 2, which costs the same amount of this, comes in BD1 steel, which is a good steel, but performs only about half as well as the XHP and edge holding, again, as far as my testing concludes. Or you can pay a whole lot more and get it in S110V or Maximet or other steels like that, depending on which store you're buying from. There's certain sprint runs, whatever. This is the winner in terms of price, performance, and function out of all those sort of standard lock back type or, beta working knives. The knives that don't give you particular, super fun fidget factor like, hey, Benchmade 940, this is a good working knife, but this one's got a whole lot of other sort of fun stuff going for it. Probably not as, in terms of structure, probably not as structurally sound as the American Lawman. It's got that certain utilitarianism that is missing from some of the knives. I think every knife collection needs a knife that's just there to work, and this is the best one out of all of them, I think. I've always said if I could only have one knife, if someone took all of them away, this would be the one I'd want to be left with, because it would mean if everyone took all of my other knives away, it'd be the one that I actually had to work with. American Lawman, all the way. Moving further down the handle, so you've got your choke up grip, which I like because I like my choils on my pocket knives. My fixed blade knives, a bit different story, but on my pocket knives, I like to do this, really get in here, really get that fine control. So, good example, the other day, a friend had bought a skipping rope, and it was wrapped, the skipping rope was wrapped in a cable tie around the actual rope part. Like, how dumb is that anyway? So think of like lots of strands of skipping rope, that plastic rope wrapped around with a plastic cable tie, and I had to fish it in with this knife and get the blade between the strands of the skipping rope using the tip here and just kind of twist and pop against that cable tie. That was all I had. I wish I had the camera to film it, but that would have been extra weird. Weird enough getting this knife out in front of someone because it has a black blade. It's a bit murdery looking for someone who doesn't like knives. Caveat there. Someone who doesn't know or particularly appreciate knives. It's a bit intense looking, but the lady was happy to have her skipping rope free because her daughter was going on about it. So there you go. It's good for that sort of work. So you choke up, you've got great control. Your thumb's halfway down the blade. You can really slide that tip very gently under, and because it's a tough, strong steel that holds its edge well, you can just slip and pop, and out it came, and the rope was free, and there was much rejoicing. But that's sort of an example of why a finger choil is welcome to me on a folding pocket knife. But the rest of the handle, very, very comfortable grip too. That finger choil becomes a really good guard for doing your more sort of dramatic knife maneuvers, I would say, even a bit of poking or like heavy cutting. It's not going anywhere because that choil is quite exaggerated. It really does fang down a fair bit there. Really, really does the trick for holding the hands in place. There's some jimping on the back. It's not particularly useful. It's kind of just there as something to sort of feel while you've got your thumb on the back. But the G10 combined with this very nice sort of other half of the choil here holds your hand really well, and it fits all four fingers very easily on the handle. It's a really well designed handle. So overall, if the blade is good and the handle is good and the blade and the handle work well together, I'm hoping you can start to see why I really do enjoy this knife so very much. But all is not perfect. It may be my favourite working knife, but I've got to point out the things that have a couple of sticking points, because this is a review after all. Alright, so first of all, the pocket clip, still a little on the tight side, just not quite perfect. It's got the old style cold steel pocket clip, which has some space under there, but this part here is just a little bit low, and it's just not the best to get in the pocket. It's not horrible, but it's not the best. But the most baffling thing about cold steel pocket clips is, why don't they just make it go straight and change the angle? Because what they need to do is send you a second left-handed pocket clip that you just have to keep with the box for the rest of your knife's life with you, as long as it lives with you. And you have to remember to not lose it in case you need to sell it or give it to someone who has left hands. Like, it's so much easier just to make a knife, and I know that easier isn't always the best, but so much easier just to have a pocket clip that goes straight down. I could see it now, like just in line with my finger, dudes, like, and it will be fine. I don't get it, and they do it with all the knives, and I just can't see how it's the more cost-effective option, if anything. It just very, very strange to me why they choose that with their pocket clips. But that's just something that I thought I would note. But the only other main thing is that as a pocket knife, sometimes you keep the knife in your pocket, which is fair, I would assume, and our pockets are often full of our keys and other things. So this here is a sticking point, because this is quite the little, you see it looks like a bird? Meep, 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 meep. This little bird's beak here often starts to nibble on your keys, and especially with my keys, which look like this and have one of these rings on them, sometimes it goes nibble, 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 and then it's got him, and it runs off with them. So exposed tangs on knives are never particularly appreciated by myself. It's the same reason I'll always knock the Delica and the Dura for them until they fix them too. I know sometimes it's necessary because they want the knife to look a certain way when it's open, fine, but I would rather the compromise. Whatever the compromise would be to not have that happen, I don't particularly like it. And the thing about the Triad Lock is, it's a really strong lock when it's working well, but again, this can sometimes grab little bits of lint and paper and fluff in your pocket, carry them up to the Triad Lock, and make it so it doesn't lock 100% authoritatively. I've never had these close on me, of course, but sometimes you feel it click and it just makes a soft little like smush sound, and you're like, something's stuck. So you have to open it up, either blow it out, or shake it out, or wash it out, and then it's fine. But it's one of those things that could probably just be mitigated by whatever they need to do, extend the blade, bring the handle down, something. I would say that would be the way to go, because I think that's probably the main, if there is a problem with this knife, that is the main one. Everything else about it is absolutely a-okay, but just that's the one thing. Even the pocket clip, whatever, I'll keep the extra pocket clip. This is the only sort of functional problem with the knife, and got to bring it up because it's a knife review. So that is it. But as for everything else, what else do people like to know about it? Oh yeah, it's on bronze phosphor washers, so it flips open really, really well, especially for a knife with an aggressive backlock. Aggressive backlocks often make the knife a bit sort of walk and talky, so no, it's one smooth motion from close to open, no worries at all. And then it's got a really nice sort of thinness to it too in the pocket, so it doesn't take up much space, as in depth rather. It's not the narrowest knife in the world, so say, and we'll do some comparisons in the last couple of shots, so say the Benchmade 940, much narrower than it. It's actually almost got some Spyderco width to it. It's kind of like, you look at the Spidey Chef here, it's kind of like, it's sort of Spyderco wide a little bit, very Demco-esque. If you look at Andrew Demko's AD10 and AD15, they're all about sort of this. They look sort of about these proportions. Often they're a bit longer this way and so a bit wider this way, but not the thinnest knife in the pocket, but then the thinness this way does sort of make up for a little bit. That's a black G10 backspacer, by the way, if you're interested. It's got a lanyard hole if you're keen on lanyards, but really those aren't really features that I use. The features that I'm most impressed with I've already gone over. So, in conclusion, if you can deal with that, which I can, even though I don't like it, I think this is probably one of the best working knives you can get, and it's a great knife to get for someone who doesn't have a knife, and you just think, oh hey, he works like a manual job, he could probably do with a good knife. Get him this one. It's simple, they don't need to, how often do you give a person your liner locking knife? Oh, can I borrow your knife? Yeah, sure. You give them your liner locking knife, and they're like, oh, and they go looking for the lock back. Get this knife for someone who doesn't know knives. It's familiar enough for them to say, oh yeah, it's the knife that, my dad used to have a knife that had a lock like that. But then it's got modern features and it's got a real nuanced design that will probably impress them, and it impresses me. As a good old working beater knife, the combination of elements here are just too good to knock back. This has been an extended look at the Cold Steel American Lawman. Thanks for watching it. Thanks for sticking around. I'm very glad I've got mine back. I won't be selling it again. And it's almost an essential piece of a knife user's collection, I think. The straight up no bullshit worker knife. And in my collection, it's the Cold Steel American Lawman. Thanks very much for watching, dudes. I'll just round it out with some size comparisons. Spyderco Dragonfly ZT0562, Spyderco Spidey Chef, Chris Reeve Small Sebenza 21, Benchmade 940, Volcaneven F1 Fixed Blade, Lion Steel T5 Fixed Blade, Apple iPhone 6, Bic Lighter, Chocolate Tiny Teddy without arms, Chocolate Tiny Teddy without legs, disembodied head of a Chocolate Tiny Teddy, the now deceased Chocolate Tiny Teddy's grieving widow, the disembodied head of the grieving widow of the previously deceased Chocolate Tiny Teddy. Thanks for watching, dudes. Hope it wasn't too dry for you. Just fucking love this knife, man. It's awesome. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.